The process is more important than the product, something like that. So in your little partners in pairs, go ahead and discuss that for a little while. Yes? What do you think?
You want to do 5 minutes?
Let's do 5 minutes.
Hey, real quick before you do that, anybody who's going to OMEA conference should have gotten an absence letter from me. If you didn't get one, shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get it.
Thank you. What do you think?
No, my one was interesting because she had like the I have 18 pages and last one. I just kind of like yeah.
I mean, mine's a lot shorter, but I think it's actually almost. And I'll probably read it next year.
Are you Hunter or Ryan?
My name's Hunter.
Hunter? Hi, Hunter. Sorry. Thanks.
Sorry.
No matter what. And if you have that done, go ahead and start working on one of your greatest areas to grow. The things that maybe don't gel as well with you. So if you're like a free, easygoing person, maybe setting expectations and maintaining procedures is not your strongest suit, or something like that. Continue.
So mine to grow was pretty separate. It sounds like
Just not great, especially if you have
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the opposite. I think I have an
that's exactly how I don't get it.
Yeah.
Can't just start
Remember what we said. Remember we talked about that.
Completely changed the program. I just feel like
I've never wrote that at all.
I did not either, but here it is.
I will be fun. Everyone will laugh.
even though it doesn't meet every week, they're not allowed to.
I talk about how I'm like,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Should I just email that to you guys since I don't have access to that board?
but I need to go more on to make sure I can actually say it in different ways.
Yeah. Okay. Because if it's an audit, I won't require, I can drop the London class. I won't be out 20 credit hours. Yeah. Okay.
That's not
That's kind of what they did for me with interviews again. So I took teacher ed and like the midterm.
No, she didn't. Oh, wait, she said
There might be loopholes as going on this, like.
It's not been exactly 5 minutes. You're gonna call it here. Finish up your conversations.
about 30 seconds.
Sweet, thank you. Before we get into the actual discussion about this, I heard a couple of questions about OMEA. Does anyone have any questions about the conference or anything like that? Hello, hello. Hannah,
Do we actually have to go pick up our passes on Wednesday, the day before, as it says on their website?
If you
No.
registered, if you did pre-registration, those things should come to you in the mail, so please check your mailbox before you leave. You should have gotten like a name tag or something of that degree. If you haven't done pre-registration, then you'd have to get it when you get there, unless that's not what you're asking.
So OMEA on their social media pages and maybe their website, I'm not sure, I haven't checked the website. They said pre-registration badges will not be mailed out. They are to be picked up on Wednesday night between 6 and 8 p.m. at the convention center.
That's new.
Yes.
That's never, that's,
Or Thursday,
so
probably Thursday.
I would err on the side of Thursday morning.
David, do you think that's gonna be the same process that they employ in Midwest?
That, I'm gonna say that, if that was your question. Unless you really want
Which
to,
is painless.
but I don't think,
There should be probably a very nice old lady that you're gonna walk up to at some point, and she's gonna have you punch in a bunch of stuff on an iPad, and then they'll print it for you right then and there. So just whenever you get there, you'll find it pretty easily. Go to the main hub, and you'll see a bunch of tables with, badges and lanyards and things like that, and then they'll get you all taken care of.
Watch, now that you've said that, it's not gonna be like a little old lady, it's gonna be like this giant, burly, like tattooed guy.
I'll put $1,000 to the little
Let's start off the conversation, but here's the twist. You gotta tell me about your partner and what they said. Or partners in this case over here. Who wants to get started? I will cold call you. Hannah, go ahead.
Caleb said he's really good about making things fun, specifically for the kids, just like band in general, and keeping them engaged. Want to talk about the growth area too?
Yeah, you can talk about it.
He said he needed to grow, let loose of the reins a little bit, and if he doesn't get everything done in a time slot, then that's okay. He needs something to do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes.
Okay.
Rachel said that, she, is gonna do a really good job of like making it a comfortable, like open, safe space for her students, but, she said that she's afraid of disciplining a little bit or what might happen if she did. And parents, we both said we're afraid of parents.
Parents, yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about these things so far. Do you have anything that you wanna add, Noah?
Go ahead.
Okay, disciplining, especially when we're good at making things fun and stuff like that. This is a conversation I had in a class this morning. I feel like I can have a tendency to be not quite on the reins as much as I should be. I can be a little bit laid back and be like, oh, well, I want everyone's voice to be heard, and I want to make sure that everyone feels like I'm treating them with dignity instead of cutting them off. But then, when kids are raising their hands again and again and again and again, and you're not getting class things done, where do you draw the line with that? Where do you become the kind of asshole teacher like, all right, I would love to hear your stories, tell me at the end, and have some little kid, throwing some kind of fit in the corner because, oh, you call everyone but me, right? Let's continue. Other things, Rachel.
Ryan said that he has really high expectations for his students and will hold them to their fullest potential. But something to grow on with that is when to loosen the reins and take more of a laid back approach.
Absolutely. And that is the other side of that dichotomy, and this is something we talked about and we can talk about this in another week too, but this is something that Noah and I were talking about in our gender and music class this morning, is about how if a guy does it, sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, this is just holding high expectations. But if a feminine presenting person does it, then it's like, oh, well, now that person's a bitch. and that is an awful like side of our society that we're. Oh, and David was there too. Sorry,
I was gonna say, I'm
you're
in
blocked by
all
this
the
thing.
Gatling
You know all
classes.
about this, but you're like blocked by this, so I didn't even see you there for a second. But it's a really rough dichotomy for us to be in, and especially for those of us who are coming and presenting, it's like, how do we navigate that space? And if you have thoughts on that too, feel free to throw these out there. This kind of discussion is able to go anywhere we want it to.
Just talking about having high expectations as a teacher, you have to be careful. And that you figured out your first year, but like figuring out like what's a high expectation and what is like beyond their reach and what is burning you out. Because eventually some of the little things will just have to go because you have to keep your mental sanity.
Well, and kind of to that end too, you kind of figure out if your high expectations really are that high, and maybe you thought you went in there and you're like, oh yeah, I have these super high expectations, and I'm not saying this is what you're gonna do anyways, but this is kind of what I did. I went in there with these super high expectations, and then by, you know, like the third week, the kids were saying, when are we gonna do some more challenging stuff? And it took me completely by surprise. I was like, I thought we were doing pretty hard stuff, but this was a group that remembered, because there was a teacher before me who was terrible and ran the program into the ground. There was a teacher before her who had had the job for 17 years and had uplifted the program and made everything awesome. And so those kids still remember the teacher like before her, and so they knew all kinds of expectations. They knew all these different things. And so when I came in there, you know, fresh faced, 22 years old, being like, all right, everybody, let's play a scale today, he. That'll be all we do because that's all I think you're capable of after the, you know, what I heard from the last teacher. They're like, we know way more than this and we can do better. And so be open to that kind of criticism from your students. I think that's really important to hear that feedback. Other things. Christian, go ahead.
On this topic or moving on?
With strengths and weaknesses, or on this topic?
I think I have something to add on to this topic as well.
Okay.
It's a good way to like set expectations as a way that will help the students grow. Is also ask for their opinion and see what they like, what their strengths and weaknesses are, to see like what they need to improve on and what they're okay to move on as well.
Go ahead.
Okay, so David said that his strength is his sense of humor, because if you have a group that is very interested in you and finds you funny, that will make the ensemble care more, be more attentive, things like that. His greatest area to grow is maintaining a work and life balance, because he was so sleepy and all he did was sleep and go to work.
Yeah, dude.
and we have a whole week about work-life balance, but just to kind of add to that, my first year, first semester, I was so invested in everything. Again, I was 22 years old. I was fresh out of college. The oldest kids that I were teaching were 19 because they had been held back a year. So there's 3 years between us at the most. And it's like, wow, okay, you guys are just kind of like, yeah, you're stupid and you're in high school still, but you're not really that stupid. We're not really that different. And so I found myself getting overly invested in a lot of the stuff that was happening, like, you know, some kind of drama did this and some kind of drama did that. And so I'm sitting there after school taking everything, and let me phrase this, you should take things seriously, but I was taking them a little too seriously. And so I'm sitting there typing up all of these letters of like, I don't even know what to call them. Maybe you have a better phrase for this, but there were kids who were accusing others of like sexual harassment and stuff like that. And so I'm typing up all of these different things that I had been hearing and all this stuff, saying it to the principals, and I don't know if anything was done about it. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But the point was that I was sitting there at school until 11 p.m. and then coming home and then going at 5 a.m. the next morning to get to school, and it's a half-hour commute both ways. And so it's like, what am I doing but school and invest in myself? And you got to know when to put that away, for sure. Other things. Are you pointing? You can go home too. Let's go, Hunter.
So Christian said that he's really passionate about music, and he gets really invested in it, but that's also kind of like a downside is because you can get kind of sidetracked and then it turns into a class period of just like random stories and you don't really get the lesson done. Just like finding kind of a line.
Absolutely. And that's something that I can run into as well. That's something that I've been really reflecting on today, especially. I started teaching back with the Plains Intermediate, and so I have been getting all of the things together, giving people instruments and folders and all the crazy stuff that happens at the beginning of classes, high expectations, procedural stuff like that. And because I really love music, sometimes I can tend to be like, oh, I want to talk about what you just said, and go and write things and talk about things and dance around and do all kinds of stuff. And the biggest thing that I've learned that's helped me with that is just, even though it sucks, and it does suck sometimes, detailed lesson plans. Just make them, stick to them. If you're like, all right, here are the things I'm getting done today. If obviously you don't get as much done because the kids can't get there, cool, awesome, do more stuff next time. If you can't get the stuff done because you're talking, that's when you know you're, okay, time to rein it in. Thank you.
Let's go with Christian.
Christian.
I completely forgot. I was just trying to been thinking about like everyone else's. I guess for me to add on to the work-life balance, especially because like I've been told, I think it was that told me that you really never take a day off when you're working. Like being a band director, music teacher is a 24/7 job, especially because like I worked at band camp over the summer and like. After it was done, we're supposed to be like relaxing, still talking about how we're gonna handle something. So I've been hearing professors recently saying that like they don't check their emails past a certain time. So I think that's important. Like for me, I dedicate 1 hour to me playing a game or me watching a YouTube video, so I can like not focus on studying or worrying about the next thing tomorrow. So I think kind of like using those kind of like allot times for yourself can help with the work-life balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, making time for yourself is super important. And we will go into more detail with that in the work-life balance week. Someone back here. You can rock, paper, scissors if you need to.
Would you like to?
Best out of 3 on shoot. Go.
Let's go.
Alright.
Zach said that his greatest strength was that he really loves music, and this is the subject that stuck with him all throughout school, and he wants to give the same experience to other kids. And then the weakness was that he's afraid of creating a curriculum because it seems like a large-scale task.
Very good. Well, you are so in luck because you're about to learn all about that in like a few minutes.
That's why I'm here.
I know, that's awesome, that's perfect.
And then let's go with Zach.
Zach, go ahead.
That's from Megan.
Yeah, one thing I'm excited about in strengths was coming from a small rural school, kind of having that experience of feeling kind of looked over when it comes to teachers, basically a rotating door of new teachers coming in and then just leaving, wanting to provide an end to that for the people that she works with. That I definitely experienced that too in my school, so I think I can relate. To be totally honest with you, what you said before you said.
I don't think I said it.
I don't know if you
I don't
can.
think I told him.
Okay.
Because you have no weaknesses.
No,
Just
just
too
He's
strong.
like-
Invulnerable.
Overpowered.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did you say anything about any of your homies or no?
No, but I can.
Please.
Okay, so I got, alright, calm down. I got Haley here. Haley said that one of their strengths is that they are a very organized person. And I know it says, don't talk about being organized. But it is really important as like a band director, being organized, having your ducks all in a row, making all the copies, having all your lesson plans, because we teach so many different classes. You just have to be able to like keep it all together, and if you can't, good luck. And then something that they need to work on is they have a little bit of an anger issue, perhaps. So just controlling that
How do you know?
emotion.
Let's talk about this. real quick. And I realized I didn't describe this very well, and I still don't totally have the verbiage for it, so I apologize for that. As far as the like not using I am organized sort of thing, organization is the skill. What are the things that supply that skill? What character traits do you have that would supply you being organized? Hunter?
Good time management, like if you budget time for the things that you need and leave time for stuff that comes up, so that you're not behind.
Exactly. Time management is one of them. What's another one? Christian?
Focus. You gotta be able to focus and keep on your path.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to focus on things, maybe even focus on multiple things at once, so you can have it all lined up. What's something else?
Perseverance.
Perseverance, was that yours?
I agree with it, but
Yeah.
I mean, how trying to get a term for it, like spatial awareness, more or less, like knowing, like keeping track of things, not just like physical things, but you know, in general.
Kind of goes into the time management. There's a phrase that goes along with it. So hold your thought. I'll say it if no one else says it.
Okay.
Anyone else? What's a synonym to organized? Like if someone's organized, you might say that they have ducks in a row, attention to detail. If you're very detail oriented, kind of goes along with the spatial awareness. If you know when things are supposed to happen, how they're supposed to happen, why they're supposed to happen, all the different things, you have your lists, you have your charts, you have all the collections of things that you need. Very detail oriented, very organized. Has everyone spoken about their partner except for people who didn't have a
we've
partner
got-
because they missed the activity?
Marcus, we got 2 people to get through real fast, which would be Caleb and then Chastity.
Thank you, Caleb.
I remember nothing that Hannah said. We started talking about the OMEA and my brain went, With that, that's probably something I need to work on, retaining information.
Yeah. Mnemonics, maybe? Yeah. Well, and Chastity, did you talk with any of your homies?
No, she came in all late.
Because I came in late, and I told you that, cause I just got off of work.
How about, oh, you did tell me that. Here, I'll unmark
Bruh.
you late. Sorry.
Unleashed.
You're unlated.
Thank you.
You're now present. So then, how about this? You just tell everybody about some strengths and weaknesses, or a
Of
strength and
myself?
weakness. Yeah.
Okay,
Or your imaginary friend, I guess.
Yeah, so, no, I'm very people oriented. I like helping people, I just wanna teach them and I wanna help them. And I think my biggest weakness when it comes to that is I get a little too invested in some people. Like, my high school band director played favorites big time. I was not, and it did a big toll on me, and I don't want that to happen to my kids, and I'm scared that it will happen.
I definitely, it's hard to, like, it's easy to fall into that trap is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. It's, cause you know, you see kids that have a lot of drive, who really care about what they're doing, who, like, and maybe it's not your most talented kids either, but it's the ones who really care about being there, and it's really, really hard to not let yourself be more invested in them because they're more invested in what you're doing. It's very hard, and I'll be honest with you, at this stage in my teaching, I don't have a really good solution to that. I don't have a really good answer. Like, there's a lot of things you can try to do to make sure that you're just super equal and even to everybody, but you know, some people can make the argument that maybe it's not a bad thing to invest more time in the students that invest more time in your class. I don't know. Noah or David, do you guys have any?
I'll throw a closing thought. So it's more of a question followed by maybe I'll tell you something afterwards. So what might have been the point of us kind of going through and asking, hey, what do you think this other person's teaching philosophy is, and learning about somebody that's sitting right next to you but could be totally different in thought? What do you guys think was the main goal in that? There's not a wrong answer.
Broadening our ideas of things that we might not have considered before.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
The point of the teaching philosophy is it's unique to yourself.
It's kind of where I was hoping that some of us might go with this, is that I've been reading a lot of your guys' teaching philosophies. I'm trying to grade them. I've got 2 that I didn't get to before class. A lot of you have some really great ideas, and almost all of you are just different enough and just similar enough that I can tell that there's going to be some good, thorough thought discussion. So don't be afraid to talk to each other about these ideas and your philosophies. Yes, it's yours, But the best thing that we do as educators is borrow/steal from others. Because we're not gonna have all the right answers. We're not always gonna know everything about every topic, but there's somebody that does. So find them, learn from them, adapt it into your own teaching, right? So I think that hopefully those of you who haven't finished your teaching philosophies might give you a little bit more of a, hey, this is how I can really approach this after hearing maybe some of the people around you. And if you have, those of you who have seen my feedback, I keep saying, this is great, keep going, right? There's no end to it. The assignment may end, but you can always come back to these ideas as we learn more. So I think that hopefully can kind of segue us into now what we're talking about today.
And just a real quick piggyback on that is one of my recent goals as an educator is to start being curious and stop complaining. Because I know that a lot of the times when I collaborate with my peers, especially you, I'm sorry, we're in every class together, I'll be, oh yeah, you know, this sucks and that sucks and the other thing is terrible and oh, I wish it wasn't that way and things like that. And I've been really trying to ask either people who do know or people who don't know, hey, what are your thoughts on this? How can we fix this? What are some solutions? If someone, you know, gives me criticism and says, you need to do something a different way, you need to do it a way that works for me, you need to do it a way that works for them, things like that. If they say that, it's really easy for me to go on the defense and be like, well, I do that, and I do this, and I try my best. Whereas you could be like, oh, what would you suggest? How can I be better? How can I do better? So that's just a little nugget that's from recent times. I have some little things that I meant to show you before we started this conversation about strengths and weaknesses, but here's a little quote by Picasso, and that's, you know, you can really think about your strengths and take ownership of that. Be proud of what you have to give as a teacher. And then another one by, I don't even know who this person is, maybe someone else does, but I saw this on the internet. Yeah, totally. But yeah, learning how to learn and recognizing, hey, I don't know everything. How can I continue to grow? So, now into the meat of stuff. You ready?
Yeah, do you want us to hit a light just for the.
That'd be fantastic.
I also would highly recommend that you go ahead and fill out devices or notebooks.
Yeah.
This is definitely something that you're going to want to take some notes on.
Yes.
Marcus, just so you know time-wise, we got about 20 minutes before our break.
Yeah, I'm watching the time. All right. As you guys are pulling off the devices, I'll tell you a little bit about my story.
Can you go back? I need to.
Okay, it seemed very organized. As we're talking about this, or as you guys are pulling on devices and writing down detailed, fancy title sequences, I, as a first-year teacher, was told, hey, and this is after they hired me, but I was told, hey, you are okay writing the curriculum for the district for music, right? And I was like, excuse me? And they were like, yeah, we're having some auditors come in and we don't have a curriculum. And I was like, that really seems like a you problem, I won't lie. And they're like, well, we're a small district, we all wear a lot of hats. That if you work in a small district, you will hear that phrase a lot. They said, we all wear a lot of hats, so you know, we'll have the coordinator lady come by and meet with you twice and just write it, just figure it out. You'll meet with your PLC. Does anyone know what a PLC is? We'll talk about that in a second. Meet with the PLC, and hold your thought, hold your thought. There's a slide about it, hold your thought. Yes, Hunter, I'm proud of you. But they were like, yeah, work with this, and then you'll have to just make this on your own. And I had no mentorship, I had no mentor teacher, and the other music teacher that was hired was, she had a stroke in October and was out for 3 months, and then she came back and was so mad at the district because they were firing her because she had a stroke. And so she wasn't very much help in creating that because she was like, I don't even care if they get the curriculum. I was like, okay, well, I care a little bit. I don't think that we should totally quit. Yeah, crazy things happen when you're a first year teacher. So let's kind of continue on. Again, you might be asked to design a curriculum because your district is being audited, and that's not there are also financial audits too, and that's kind of a part of this, but it's more like, is this district adhering to all the standards and rules and all the other stuff that we apply to it nationally, statewide that should continue getting funding. If they're trying to get a grant so that they can make, like, oh yeah, we wanna give all our kids iPads or something like that, that might be a reason why you need to have a viable curriculum. If you have a complete overhaul administration, which is exactly what I had, where every single principal was new at all of the schools in the district, that might happen to you too. Or if you have an ineffectual predecessor, again, which is kind of what I had, that teacher writing the thing in the ground. And kind of like, I think it was Emily who said that last week, like, or maybe it was Noah, but when you're doing survival, you are not thinking about, okay, well, how can I design a whole year's worth of curriculum that's gonna be viable K-8, K-12, K whatever, for all the different subjects, not just general music or not just band. Craziness. Psychosis. Hopefully you're done writing. So this process kind of looks like, you get the either state or the county administration, and they are asked by voters and board members and stuff, and they're like, hey, I noticed this district doesn't have a curriculum or doesn't have a recent curriculum. It was updated in the 70s. And so they say, hey, get the superintendent to change that. So the superintendent finds someone who is gonna quote unquote help you with that. They don't really help you with that because they're getting paid 10 grand either way. And then the principals are like, hey, you get to do this now. And so then here we are in the PLCs, Hunter.
Is that like I think I'm wrong, but I was gonna say it's a teacher that is basically like your mentor for the first few years. That's something else, isn't it?
Kind of. It is something else, but this is sort of the same gist. A PLC stands for a professional learning community. And so it's people who are supposed to be like in your whole field. So if you're in a larger district, it's like, oh yeah, the band and choir and orchestra teacher in your building, or maybe band, choir, orchestra, and a couple of the, the way that we did it in my hometown was we had little triads, which sounds very like Yakuza gang type thing, but we had little triads, and so the elementary schools would feed into the junior high, would feed into the high school in that area of the town, and then same thing in a different place. You might have some of the elementary music teachers go into that. In a smaller district, if it's just you and one other music teacher, it's going to be you and that music teacher, and then probably the art teachers, and the PE teachers, and the computer science teacher, and other people that they just kind of throw in there, the shop teacher, the, the welding teacher, all kinds of stuff that are just random people that really don't know how your field works, but you also don't really know how their field works, and so you're just like, yeah. Again, kind of going back to the complaining versus being curious. You're just like, well, it sucks that we're all put together. We have to make this curriculum. Try to be curious. And then you. I pity you if you're doing this. It sucks. And we just talked about the PLCs. So, and I kind of told you the bigger versus smaller, but how can this be beneficial? If say that you're working with the art teacher and PE teacher and computer science and welding. Like, what is the benefit to that?
Kind of goes back to like earlier mentions of like outside view on things. Considering things you may not have from a different angle.
Absolutely, yeah, different perspectives, blowing the mind in more than one direction. Other thoughts? Ryan?
There could be opportunities to collaborate with certain things, like one collaborate with the art teacher, students paint something based on a music piece that they play, or
Absolutely.
stuff like that.
Yeah, and that is a great way to do that cross-curricular artistry sort of thing. What's up?
I was gonna say super quick add into that.
Go ahead.
A real life example, if you're like, how would I actually collaborate with, the art teacher? There was a science teacher and we had a beautiful 3D printing class where we had 3D printers for our students, and they learned how to do it. And I had a student that came to me first and said, have you ever tried a synthetic reed? And of course I play on synthetic reeds, I love them. And so they wanted to learn how to do it and look at a reed. So I gave them a bunch of reeds, they went home, studied it, came in, they tried to make a 3D reed, and it was very playable. Was it perfect? By no means, no, but it was their first shot. So then that student and I were gonna keep perfecting it, and they eventually fell off of the project. But the science teacher and I both said something to put 10 years down the line is, could we start getting kids in the 3D printing classroom to essentially print reeds for our beginning students, give every beginning student a free synthetic reed. That's gonna save thousands of people money, or not thousands, but you're gonna save thousands of dollars over the course of a lot of time. So there's a very easy, direct way that you can create an opportunity and you don't have to leave your building.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, you know, if there's an art piece too, like if you're studying the art of Monet or something like that, then maybe you can work on some impressionist type pieces with your band, and you're like, okay, well, this is relating to the stuff you're learning in art class, and then there's just all kinds of cool things that you can do with that. And just to kind of move things along, another one is if we are friends with the people in our building, they will be friends with us. Make friends, I think I told the string methods people this, make friends with your custodians and your lunch ladies and your secretaries, because they will save your ass all the time. And then also be friends with the other electives type people, because they're in the same kind of crappy boat that they're constantly bailing out as you are. And if you're like, hey, I need a little like ramp sort of thing to set my drum set on in the bleachers for pep band, maybe the shop teacher can help you with that. And then you aren't, you know, scratching your brains and scraping the bottom of your budget to make these things happen. Let's continue. So, what is a curriculum? There's a difference between a curriculum and a scope and sequence. And so, and I had to amend this myself the other day. A curriculum is when we have specific objectives that are tied to standards. And so that's around what age should the students be exercising what skills. And these are all standards-based tied into the national and state standards. And if you have a really large district, maybe the district standards. Scope and sequence is more of the day-to-day. Here's the time frame and the timeline. Here's when we need it done by. Here's how we're gonna do it. Here's what we're gonna do. Let me know when you're done writing.
And the most direct example that you guys can pull out of your current situation is your syllabi, right? And then a fun experiment, if you're ever like, I feel really confident in this class that I know what the syllabus is saying, see if they actually stick to the syllabus as the semester goes along. Take notes. Did the professor hit all the notes that they said they were going to? Did they change things? Why did they change things? It gives you a really good example of preparation versus practice too.
Absolutely. I'm seeing people starting to stop writing, which is a weird way of phrasing that. I'm seeing people stopping writing. I'm seeing people slow down on their writing. Something like that. I'm going to the next slide.
We'll fix it in post.
What is an objective / outcome? So this is another like interactive time. Talk to the neighbor. What's an objective or an outcome?
This is something at the end that you learn. It's like more
Like some outcomes, either feel it and understand or
Yeah, I was thinking
Do you know Wheeling, West Virginia?
Alright. Let's hear some ideas. Since you were so chatty just then, go ahead, David.
So I just said an objective is saying something like, my students will be able to perform the B flat scale with 95% note accuracy.
So students will, I like that. And then you had another word, a little action word, perform, and blah, 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 and then some kind of metric, right? You said 95%. I'm just gonna go,
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy that. Other ideas? no other ideas, David only has ideas, right?
We just said, just any sort of final goal, like a performance, like playing a scale, just any sort of, proof that they learned something.
Okay, proof that they learned, I'm gonna write that down too. Proof they learned. What else?
So for outcome, we said that's like the concert, which happens whether you're ready or not, and then the objective would be, did the students learn what I wanted them to learn in the process of getting to the outcome?
Okay. Objective. So this kind of goes back to the product versus process, right? Objective is content, concert content. All right, any other ideas, Chessie?
I have a question.
Ask away.
Okay, so is there a timeline that should be like related to this? Like,
We'll get there. Hold it.
Okay.
Hold it in your brain. Hold it in your brain and ask me that question in like 4 slides. Okay?
okay.
Yes.
4?
What?
4?
Maybe more or less. Give or take 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Zach.
I think part of the outcomes is the metrics you use to measure them.
Okay.
I mean, it's gonna depend on what exactly you're trying to measure, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Okay. So I really like all of these ideas. I think it does depend on exactly what you're talking about. If you're going kind of like you were saying with the outcome, we can consider that maybe a goal to meet. And so we can have that, okay, well, they're going to perform stuff like that. Different action words that have that in there. Objectives maybe are more about the content. So maybe instead of being able to perform, maybe they're able to understand or analyze. And so that kind of gets into this next little bit here. So it's skills and knowledge that you want to have by a certain point in time. And I really like the way that David was putting this, because I love words of power. Some Skyrim BS for real. Having those action words is imperative to knowing what you actually want them to do. Because if you're just saying, oh, well, students will sing the whatever scale. Okay, but what skills do they need to have that scale? Like, so on and so forth. Does that kind of make sense? Real quick, before, I'm gonna just put a pin in this. Are you guys okay with continuing this part after our little break? Or do you wanna dive?
So to give you the-
I think you kinda need it, right?
Yeah, to give you the full option here, we
yeah.
could take our break in 5 minutes as normally
As
scheduled.
Or
And
take our
then come
break
back
after
and
the
finish
lecture
this
before the
discussion
activity.
and then do the activity. Or we could power through for a second, get through the rest of the lecture, take our 10-minute break wherever it lies, and then come back and do the activity.
Do that.
Let's power through.
Power through? Alright, we'll power through, I'll try to talk fast. So here you can see having, okay, we can audiate is a really good example. Sight reading, better example, that's more of, okay, here's that skill that we kinda gotta build into, and like, students will sing. So this is a little super condensed scope and sequence example. So it states the scope, what week you're doing it, what lesson you're doing it, when you need it done by, and then the sequence, so what sort of things you'll do before the other things. Try to break it down as much as possible. And I know that's gonna be really stupid and like rip your hair out kind of thing, but if you think about that, that's not only gonna make your lesson plans better, it's gonna make your teaching as a whole better, because if you're saying, oh, Caleb, I need you to play, a B natural or something like that on your trumpet. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, how can I break that down? Okay, well, here's the fingering. And you're like, well, why is it natural? I'm like, oh, I never taught you what naturals are. Kind of break that down. Well, a natural does this. How, so things like that. Anyways, I'm rambling. I'll go for it. So if we kind of combine these, that's where it becomes this really big deal, and that's what my district wanted, was not just the curriculum, but also the scope and sequence. So they wanted me to do, here's all the goals that all the kids need to meet by, whatever grade group they're in, but also here's an entire plan for all those kids for all the content areas. And it's daunting. But let's make it less daunting. So how? And how to do it without pulling your hair out. My favorite method is this first one, which is big to small. So I made the curriculum first, and then I designed the scope and sequence after that. Because then I could take the overarching goals that I had and conform my lessons that were the day-to-day into it. The other way to go about it that I am not as big of a fan of because it requires more planning than my tiny little brain was ready to handle is to do your day-to-day and then wrap it all together into a curriculum and find those themes to create those goals. And if we had a little bit more time, I'd ask you guys what you think you might prefer, but just think about that in your own brain and tell me sometime if you want to. Let me know if we're ready to stop, like go to the next one. Haley?
Go.
So step one, timeline. You can't know what you want to teach them until you know when you want to teach them. And so figure out good landmarks in your academic calendar. This is more on the scope and sequence side of things. So if you have, spring break or the end of the quarter semester or winter break or things like that, those might be good times for you to have as benchmark goals. Okay, I want them to know how to sing a major scale with solfege by the end of the first quarter. Pretty reasonable goal. Break it down into those sections based on how often you see them. So if you're seeing your kids every single day, 2 weeks might be a good standard for your topics. If you're seeing them 4 a week every 3 weeks, which is when I saw my 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, you kind of got to plan on having a month to learn these things because you'll learn it for a week, not see them for a month, and then you have to reinforce that. So, oh, hey, maybe I actually do kind of remember sort of how to take my trumpet out of its case, which we were doing in December, which made me want to die. Take breaks, exams, and weird weeks into account. So testing, especially for high school, make sure that you don't have 12 different objectives lined into the week of ACT or SAT testing. Yeah. I'm gonna go to the next slide unless someone objects.
1 second.
Okay. Christian.
I just wanted to point out a lot weird stuff. I had to do my solo and ensemble the same day as I took the SAT.
Exactly.
It was not fun.
Exactly. And that's the kind of stuff that both in a state and district level we need to be thinking of, but also that we need to just be better about as teachers. Because we can really cram things into the spring semester. So step 2, and I did an animation. I hope it went through on that side. But standards. By the word familiarize, I do not mean go in and read them like a book and sit down with your chai latte and make that stuff happen. Just know that they exist, know generally what they are, and a good idea, I know at one point, for those of you that did take the survey, don't tell me who it is, remember, it's voluntary and anonymous, but for those of you that did, there was a question about, and I'm not discussing any results. Yeah, I'm referencing.
You're good, go ahead.
I know, you just gave me a panicked look.
No, I'll stop when you get there.
Okay, but there was a question about, I completely lost my train of thought now. Now I'm trying to make sure I'm not saying anything stupid.
You're good.
We'll come back to that part. But anyways, is about knowing the standards and oh, yes, I do remember what it was. It was about if you can defend your practices to administration and to parents and to students and to anybody who questions what you do, having these standards in mind is a great way to do that. So if your admin comes up and is like, well, how do I know that having them rehearse this piece twice or whatever, having them break off into sections, how do I know that that's actual learning? They don't have a test or a paper that they've turned in to give them grades. How are you grading these kids? And then you can show them, okay, well, here in my rubric, I have it tied into all the state and national standards. You can go read them if you want. They're like, oh, well, okay then, fine. But if you're just like, oh, well, it's really important because they have to do it. It's not as defensible as if you have some stupid numbers to back you up. And I know that's kind of sad that we have to live in that bureaucratic world, but if you do have that backing, it's gonna make your life way, way easier. Got the slide? Cool. So this is, again, more of the scope and sequence part. Once we have when and what, now we think about how. And this is where you get into the real nitty gritty of like, here's a bunch of different teaching tools. We're gonna play Poison Rhythm on week 2, day 2. Like, real nitty gritty type of stuff. And don't be afraid to kind of recycle things. Like, if you go more than a month, and you're seeing these kids every day, if you go more than a month without playing Poison Rhythm, maybe play Poison Rhythm again. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's my biggest advice to you is, it's okay to put very similar things consistently through that because you're trying to meet similar goals. And especially if you're trying to meet the same goal, it doesn't have to be a brand new innovative lesson every single time. It can be. If you're driven to make that happen, every single lesson is new and exciting and fresh, power to you. Do it and share it with me so that I can try to implement it. And also, just in the back of your mind with every lesson, be thinking about how you can remediate content, how you can accommodate your students, and how you can adapt on the fly. So if there's a subject or a topic that they just are not getting, what are some things that you can have in the back of your mind that are, okay, here's the building block to that, let me help with it. Here's another way to look at it, here's a tool to help you. Accommodation, if you have a student who just, what are you doing?
You gotta go to New Horizons.
Oh, you gotta go?
Horizons, I have to go teach.
Oh, have fun, bye.
Bye.
See ya. But if you have, bye, leave. I don't know what I'm saying. You guys get it, right?
Yeah.
Sort of, kind of, hopefully. Ask me questions if you don't. So now here is the activity part. So we can take our regularly scheduled break.
We're gonna go ahead, we're only about 5 minutes past when we were gonna stop. So let's be back in here, ready to go at 6:05, please. So I'll give you a whole extra 30 seconds. If you have questions on assignments or anything else, or you didn't understand the first kind of half here, I'll be in the room, please
I
come
will
ask
also be in the
questions.
room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I
How's it going?
intro to music ed.
Can you,
Flying by the seat of my pants.
when do you need to do it?
Thank you for being here.
When junior reviews are at the end of the
Oh,
semester.
then I have plans on.
Yeah.
Can you try to find me maybe?
Sorry, I forgot.
No, it's okay.
You okay?
Sometime
Yeah,
next.
it's just a long day.
Yeah,
There.
yeah.
Just because this week has been not
It's
great.
I have to be at
Um,
work